Well, hello everyone. Thank you for being here for the July. This is July. I get mixed up every month because time is flying. The July Essential Vegan Desserts live event. I'm so happy that you could join me today in my kitchen. I'm really excited to talk about no oven needed desserts. And I think that probably means different things to all of us. Sometimes for me, a no oven needed dessert or a no bake dessert really means I pull a piece of cake or a cake or cookie out of the freezer because my freezer always have bits of things. But in any case, I've got some things that I'd really like to show you today before I get started with the main event, the yummy main event. I just want to remind you that on the right side of your screen, there's a place to put some questions in. I will be getting to the questions, as many as I can. I may ask you a follow-up question if I'm not quite understanding or I want a little more information. I want to welcome everyone who is here, guests, students who've graduated, students who are currently in Essential Vegan Desserts or any of the Ruby courses. I want to take a minute and talk to my Essential Vegan Desserts students and let you know that I'm really glad you're in the course. Always, you're inspiring me like crazy. That is an amazing thing. Your work is incredible. I want to remind you that if you have any technical issues, any problems that you need help with of a technical nature, write to support@ruby.com. Remember to join and participate in the Facebook group. I know our wonderful producer, Patrick, has put the link to the Facebook group, and that is a great place to share some extra photos or say, hey, I need a new blender or a new mixer, or what's your source for chocolate, and so on. The interaction there is terrific. It's really terrific. And I'm in and out of there quite a lot. If you have a question about a particular assignment, then ask a question in the Q&A. But that said, remember that at each recipe and at each unit, actually, you'll find that there are questions and answers that you can look at. So what you need to know may already be there. And in terms of the photos that students have been posting in Essential Vegan Desserts from the beginning of the course until now, they are for inspiration and for your enjoyment, but don't take them as gospel because you don't know what the grade was. And that is to say, every assignment has particular criteria. So make sure before you upload your assignment for grading, and I do all of the grading, that you look at the criteria so that I can really give you as much help as possible. So that's what I have to say about that for now. I may come back to some things, but I see that the link to the Facebook group is there. That Facebook group is a private Facebook group for people who are in Essential Vegan Desserts or have been in Essential Vegan Desserts only. These live events are for everyone. So, I'm in the East, I'm in Philadelphia. We have had unseasonably hot weather this summer. I know much of the United States has been extra hot. I think all over the world has been super, super hot. And I'm a summer person. I really live for summer. And up until this year, I was like, can't be too hot, bring it on. But it's, triple digits is really something. So while my apartment is air conditioned, I'm inclined not to want to crank up my oven and use that energy during the summer. And also my palate is craving cooler desserts. So that's what today's live event will be about. I'm going to show you some. And some can be really simple. I mean, there's nothing wrong with simple. When I'm hot, I tend to get dehydrated. Make sure to drink a lot of liquid water. I like to put mint in my water. I like to put cucumbers in my water. I save the tops from strawberries when I'm cleaning strawberries. I take the tops off and I make strawberry water. So that's all refreshing, but you can eat your water too. So over here, the first thing I'm going to show you is a very simple, I like to put things in a nice glass or dish because we eat with our eyes, and that includes yourself. So I'm living alone. This will be my dessert. It's not a company dessert, but what I have here is some cantaloupe and watermelon. The pieces are on the large size because that's the way I personally like them. That's up to you. I like this particular fruit with a squeeze of lime. I'm just crazy about the lime. But I have also put in here, I don't know if you can see this, little tiny tomatoes from my garden. I think tomatoes, which are botanically a fruit, I believe, and if I'm wrong, somebody will let me know, I hope, tastes really good here. And I've got some basil and mint in here. Not chiffonade. It's my preference is to really munch on a big piece of mint. So I might eat this with just like this, with maybe a sprinkling of salt, maybe not. The lime I find is very refreshing. This is okay. This is a naturally gluten-free, naturally sugar-free, no fat added. It's pretty obvious. It's a bowl of fruit, but we can do a lot more with this if we want to. And I've got a bunch of different toppings and things to show you what I might do with this. Now, this morning, I made this. There really isn't a recipe. I was just trying something out. I thought about making a crumbly topping, a crispy topping that didn't have to be put into the oven. Now, of course, you can do something like this on the stovetop if you want, but I felt like playing around, and I can tell you exactly what I did. The bowl was quite a bit more full. It was fuller than it is now, but it was one of those things that I honestly couldn't stop eating. So I know it's a winner. I put about 6 tablespoons of rolled oats in here. These were not toasted oats. Sometimes I toast my oats, but I used raw oats. I used white sesame seeds and black sesame seeds, both for the crunch and because they're high in calcium. And I feel that, desserts are treats. So you've heard me say this before if you follow me at all or you've been to any of my events, that I never say desserts are where you get your healthy. I'm not telling you. I get emails that say maple syrup has minerals and this and that in it. Well, it does. It's definitely better than white sugar. But we want to eat our grains and beans and greens and vegetables. That's where we get healthy. But if I can amp up my desserts and make them healthier, I'm going to do that. So I've got black and white sesame seeds in here. And you could add nuts. Walnuts would be nice. Any nut that you like would be nice. I just was choosing not to do that. Of course, that would make a crunchier crumble than it is now. But what was I going to do to hold it together? I always have date paste in my freezer. Always. My freezer always has date paste, reduced aquafaba, some cashew cream, and then I can really make desserts quickly. So I know, and I want you to remember that you can always add more. It's really hard to adjust if you've made something too wet. And I'm talking about something like this, not a cake batter, not a batter-based dessert. That you really have to follow a formula. So 1 tablespoon of date paste, and I mixed it up and it held together. I've got cinnamon in here, both because I like the flavor and because cinnamon is said to be good for blood sugar. And I also put some nigella seeds in here just because I like them. And this is really delicious. So I'm going to put it, I ate a good third of this. And you can crunch it together if you want to make balls. You can see that I think you can see that it's holding together. So I'm going to put this on another fruit salad. Another thing that I can do with the fruit salad, I'm going to walk over to my refrigerator in a little while, is put some Aquafaba Meringue on the fruit salad and torch it. And then you've got a really elevated or party fruit salad that isn't too caloric, too calorie dense. You've got the health benefits of eating the fruit and so on. And it's always a surprise, and it's really nice. So that's something that I wanted to talk about. I keep cake crumbs in my freezer. These are just some cake crumbs that you can sprinkle over a cream or a pudding. And another thing that I'm going to show you today was I really love chocolate pudding. I just love chocolate pudding. And there is a recipe in the course from my book, Vegan Chocolate, that's called Almost Instant Chocolate Pudding, because it's almost instant. It's almost as fast as opening a box. My mother made mighty fine chocolate pudding right out of the box. Well, I decided to make a half recipe this week, and I had remembered that a couple of weeks ago, I measured all the dry ingredients. I put it into a ball jar. I marked it, 1/2 recipe of almost instant chocolate pudding. And all I had to do was shake the jar, put it into a small saucepan, add the oat milk. I use oat milk. You can use any plant milk that you like. And I had chocolate pudding in no time. I added just a tad of agar powder because at the time I thought I'd eat a little bit and then use it to frost a cake. You don't need to do that, but I'm so glad I did, because I always want to see how I can push ingredients. So this is why I say you always want to test, how is the gel turning out? How is your frosting? Put some on the counter, put some in the refrigerator, put some in the freezer, and see what happens. Well, I put a bunch of this pudding in the freezer, and it tasted like chocolate sorbet. So I've got that ready to show you. I let it defrost a little bit. I kind of cubed it, and it's back in the freezer, and it will eat like ice cream, but I also defrosted the rest, and it actually tastes like chocolate pudding. I like chocolate pudding right out of the saucepan. I like to eat it when it's warm, but I was really surprised by how delicious it was when it was cold. So I'm going to have Patrick show you an example of a no-bake tart. We've got a no-bake lemon. It's a lemon tart, and the crust is any of the, you can call it raw if you want, depending. If you've toasted your oats and toasted your nuts for your crust, it isn't technically raw, but doesn't have to be baked. So this is something that you can do ahead, keep in your freezer. And the filling was luscious, and really all it is a lemon agar gel. Now, I think it looks really pretty. I love the tart lemon flavor. When I serve this, I will surely cover it with fresh blueberries or blueberries and raspberries for 2 reasons. I think that it looks more attractive. It's more of a party dish, but also we're getting the health benefits from the berries. And you know that berries are very good for us. So that's one dessert I wanted to show you. That's really simple. We have a whole unit in Essential Vegan Desserts on using agar, because agar is one of the ingredients that I call the secret agents of vegan desserts. You want to learn to use agar correctly. It's an amazing substitute for bovine gelatin. And unlike bovine gelatin, if your agar gel is too firm, you just add some more liquid. If it's too soft for your intended result, then you cool it down a little bit, add a little more agar, do another test, and you're ready to go. So that's very, very useful and delicious, because acids like lemon, lime, and also pineapple cut the gelling capacity of agar. You're going to have to use more. I think in the course we say 1/4 to 1/3 more, but this is why we go over testing so much. It's really important. The next photo is a chocolate mousse, and this is a very dense chocolate mousse that is made just with chocolate and water. And this is actually one of the assignments in the course. So you need to choose a chocolate that's got enough cocoa butter, that's not dairy, that's the fat in the chocolate. You need to have enough ice over which you're going to whisk the chocolate and water. You need ample ice, and you need some patience. So it's possible that you're going to need to add a little more melted chocolate, but honestly, if you follow the directions, we have a video, you choose a good chocolate, no chocolate chips. Chocolate chips are meant not to melt. They are considered heat resistant chocolate, so you don't want to go there. And you want, I would say, a 70 to 72% chocolate, lots of ice. You're going to get this great result. And it's very chocolate forward. So you want to make sure that you like the taste of the chocolate. You can add a liqueur if you want to do that, or sweeten it up with some sauce that you put on the top. Other ways to do a pudding, aside from this mousse, this dense mousse, is you can make an aquafaba meringue and fold in kind of a sturdy chocolate ganache. We have a recipe in the course for that. I think it's called light and airy chocolate mousse. It's very much like a French chocolate mousse. It's like the one that I learned to make out of my Julia Child book, where I used every pot and pan and bowl in my house. Or chocolate avocado mousse. And don't forget tofu. Silken tofu or a firm tofu, depending on the recipe, is really makes a lovely sauce or a lovely chocolate mousse. So that's another thing. Of course, there is the summer favorite that has become an all year long favorite, and that is Baked Alaska. And the photo that Patrick is showing you was done by Essential Vegan Desserts student Marie Jose. And Marie was a pastry chef, cake decorator in traditional non-vegan kitchen for many, many years, and decided that she wanted to learn vegan desserts. And now she's doing desserts at a vegan restaurant, I think in Quebec or Montreal in Canada. And she said she felt like she got a box of new crayons. Well, her meringue is just gorgeous. She did that with a Saint Honoré tip. So that's something that you can do. Now, you would have a piece of cake or a brownie, because a good brownie is going to stay flexible. I use a gluten-free brownie to keep this dessert gluten-free. And then either ice cream. I always have Oatly ice cream in my freezer just because I do. I've got a whole chapter on ice creams in my book. We have ice creams in the course. Or you can make a banana-based nice cream for your Baked Alaska. And you don't even have to have cake. It can just be a frozen dessert and the meringue, and then you torch it with, where's my torch? I'm actually going to torch something today. So you torch it or not. So now I'm going to ask Patrick, before we go on, to show you the video of making the aquafaba meringue. Now, you know, or maybe you don't know, aquafaba is the liquid from cooked chickpeas, and I'm going to talk about it after you see the video.
To make vegan meringue, add the bean water, also known as aquafaba, and cream of tartar to a stand mixer, and beat until the mixture becomes somewhat opaque in color. Next, with the mixer on low, slowly start to incorporate the sugar, about a tablespoon at a time. Beat the mixture, increasing the speed of the mixer, for approximately 1 minute between each addition of sugar. You can see the mixture start to change both color and texture as soon as more sugar gets added. If needed, scrape the sides of the bowl and continue until all of the sugar has been incorporated. You can see as the sugar gets added, the mixture starts to look more and more like meringue. Once all of the sugar has been incorporated, continue to beat the meringue on high speed for an additional 10 minutes or so. Lastly, reduce the speed to medium-low and add the vanilla. When done, the meringue should be glossy and form stiff peaks like this. If the peaks seem too soft and fold over like this, continue to beat the mixture until it looks like this. This meringue can be used in any way that a regular meringue can be used. Here we are using it to make homemade s'mores. It can also be piped onto desserts such as baked Alaska, topped with sugar and bruleed like a marshmallow.
Okay, so that is one of my favorite. That was Dawn, the co-founder of Ruby and the voice of Ruby. And honestly, I just love making Aquafaba meringue. Those of you in the course know this, but I want to tell the rest of you that most recipes for using the chickpea liquid, and that's all it is. Sometimes it's called chickpea brine. It's just the liquid from cooked chickpeas. So most recipes that I had seen say, open a can of chickpeas, drain them, take the liquid, put them in your mixer. You need an electric mixer. A stand mixer is handier because you have to beat for at least 10 minutes, but it can be done by hand with the whisk attachment. Use some cream of tartar, just the way you would make meringue, an egg white meringue. And if you don't have cream of tartar, you can use an acid, you can use some vinegar or lemon juice, and then start beating and add super fine sugar, castor sugar, which I make by taking organic vegan cane sugar and powdering it until it's super fine. And then you add that and you keep beating and you get that combination. So that just didn't work for me. It wasn't precise enough. And so I noticed that some cans had 2/3 of a cup of liquid, some had 3/4. We have to be more precise. Vegan desserts doesn't mean throwing out technique. And I discovered by trial and error, and they're not every pastry chef agrees with me, but this works every single time. I reduce the chickpea liquid. If it's from a can, I reduce it in a saucepan to a 1/2 cup. And then I chill it and either keep it in my refrigerator for a few days or in the freezer. And I don't usually just do one at a time. If I'm using chickpea liquid from dried chickpeas that I have cooked in my Instant Pot, Ju Deaver, who wrote a book called Aquafaba, and I really recommend this book. And if you have access to previous live events, find the one that I did with Ju, and it's very interesting. She talked all about it. She suggests that you add a stick of kombu to the chickpeas, the dried chickpeas. I always add kombu when I'm cooking beans anyway. And then I reduce that liquid by at least a half, the cooking liquid. I don't salt it, by at least a half. And when it's half, I put a little bit in the refrigerator. And if it's more viscous, it's good to go. So that's for sure. That's what you want to do. Now I'm going to show you some that I made a different way, and you're seeing it before anyone else. So what I did here, I have got blueberries, I've got apricots, and I took some of that crumble that I made, and I'm going to put some aquafaba that I made yesterday, and we'll see how it held up. I think it held up. So here it is. And I'm just going to lob it on here. Now this is a little stickier than what you saw in the video, because I used, at the end of the whipping, I added a tiny little bit of xanthan gum mixed with a little bit of sugar, and that's what I got. So I don't want, this dish is cold, so I am very cautiously going to burn it, very cautiously. All right. So that looks good to me. And this is essentially fruit, blueberries, apricots, some of that healthy and yummy and crunchy crumble, and some aquafaba meringue. And that, I think, makes a wonderful, wonderful dessert. This is the same meringue I had from the Perfect Puree Company of Northern California, and that's what it's called, the Perfect Puree. I had some Meyer lemon concentrate. I was sure, I mean, technically it should have deflated the meringue, but because I used a little bit of xanthan gum, it held up. It's very tart. And I told you when I showed you when you saw the photo of the lemon tart, I like chocolate a lot, but I also like very tart lemon dessert. So that was delicious. So I am sure, I'm sure this is going to be somehow a treat for me later, just like that. Maybe I'll put a piece of, a piece of my mint. I don't know if I think that works. Another thing that you can do is, I always have ganache around, and I hope you do too. Ganache is a percentage of heavy cream and chocolate, except we vegan kitchens don't use heavy cream. So I did this with 70% chocolate and some oat milk, put it on a piece of whole grain bread. I put some cacao nibs on here for crunch, and a little bit of a very special salt that I have to find. Oh, here it is. You see me twirling around in my kitchen here. One of my friends, who is a Ruby Plant Pro graduate and a friend of mine, Laura H., sent this to me. And it is Tahitian vanilla infused salt. And it smells absolutely delicious. You might see there's a vanilla bean in here. And I thought that would be absolutely delicious on that crostini. And I'm sure it is. I'm going to taste it later. So if you're interested in learning more about vanilla, and vanilla is a fascinating subject, you can go also to the live event archives, and you're going to find an entire event on vanilla, where my friend and colleague, Chef Kathy Gold, who is an expert in vanilla, really schooled us in all about vanilla. Now, I'm going to ask Patrick to show you, since we were talking about frozen desserts, I said you can use a store-bought vegan ice cream. You can make ice cream, really tastes like really creamy ice cream with a banana base. And if you don't want the banana flavor, add chocolate, add fruit. I love adding date paste, pieces of dates, because they don't freeze solid. Tastes like bits of caramel and maybe some date syrup, and you get a really yummy date ice cream. or you can do a sorbet. So we've got some photos of some of the sorbets in the course to show you. And then the next thing that I'm going to show you is, this is something that is brand new to me. Actually, I'm going to hold this, and you know what? I'm going to take some questions because I see a bunch of questions here. So Vivian J says, I'm interested in learning how to prepare vegan, dairy-free, and caffeine-free desserts that heart patients can eat without high cholesterol. Is there any way to accomplish this? Well, Vivian, there sure is, because in terms of cholesterol, there is no cholesterol in vegan desserts. There's no cholesterol in vegan foods. So that's across the board. There just isn't. You want to, if it's a heart patient, I'm sure you want to go towards the low fat or no fat desserts, fruit salads, gels, fruit soup and salad, and so on. In terms of caffeine, don't use coffee, and maybe limit the amount of chocolate. Truthfully, there is very little caffeine in chocolate, but if you're concerned about that, then go to non-chocolate desserts. But there is no cholesterol in vegan desserts. Betty wants to know, do you have a pastry recipe for a fruit galette using whole grain flour? Betty, we do. In the course, we have an oil-based rather than a butter-based pastry crust that is made with 50% AP flour and 50% whole wheat pastry flour. The AP flour is unbleached, and I think it really works a charm. And galettes are my favorite way to do pies. A galette, for anyone who doesn't know, you roll out a round or an oblong. You put a fruit filling in the center, but you leave 2 to 3 inches of an edge, and then you just fold the dough over. So it's very rustic looking and delicious. I make them all the time. Linda wants to know, what's the best unrefined sugar to use in no-bake desserts? Well, we don't use any refined sugar in essential vegan desserts. We have a variety of sugars, and we decide individually the best sugar to use after the best sweetener to use, both granulated and liquid. They aren't interchangeable, based on your own palate, your own dietary considerations, and the particular dessert, because they're not all interchangeable. So we use organic cane sugar, which is the closest to white sugar, but it isn't bleached and it isn't filtered, so it retains a little bit of the molasses. There is whole cane sugar, which is cane sugar with all of the molasses retained. That works really nicely in spice cakes, and even in a chocolate cake. I wouldn't use it in a vanilla cake. A lot of people today like granulated coconut sugar. It's considered sustainable, and to me it has a mild molasses taste, so I like that very much. On the liquid side, I like maple syrup the best. Depending again on the dessert, I like rice syrup, not for cakes. I like the caramel taste. I love date syrup, which is known in parts of the world as Ceylon, and I like sorghum too. So we've got lots of choices for sweeteners. Regina says, I'm confused about recipes calling for coconut milk. The canned products contain so much cream that has separated. This is a really interesting question. Thank you for asking it. How do you recombine it? So, look at that. I happen to have some out on my counter for making some cream later. This one says Simple. They're both the same brand, Native Forest, which is a good brand. This says Simple, no guar. I can hear this. It hasn't separated because they haven't been in my refrigerator. This one is classic. It has some guar gum, and I can still hear it because it hasn't been refrigerated. Once you refrigerate these full fat coconut creams, most of the time, 80% of the time, the fat, the coconut cream, separates from the coconut water that's in the bottom. That is actually something we want when we're making coconut whipped cream, for example, or certain recipes where we want coconut cream. But to recombine them, you just put them in a large vessel that will hold the whole thing and whisk and whisk and whisk, and they will combine. So that's all you have to do. You can't have too much cream. No. I mean, if you're looking for a coconut milk that's low fat, I never buy that. I ask everybody, don't spend your money on water. If you're looking for a coconut milk that has less fat, then buy a can like this and cut it with water, and you've got low fat coconut milk. But we really want them to separate. Every once in a while, I always if I need the coconut cream that separates, then I always put the cans in my refrigerator at least 2 days before I need them. And I always have an extra can in there because every once in a while, they're just one that doesn't separate and nobody knows why. That's just the way it goes. So thank you for that question. Now, the next question is, what's the best essential non-dairy, fat-free vegan desserts? Well, I think they're all, this is very personal. It's very personal. We call this Essential Vegan Desserts, the course, because the idea is I wanted very much to have a course that really teaches the foundational techniques for making perfect vegan desserts every time. So we go into the kinds of plant milks and how to make creams and ingredients like agar and the starches and flours and cocoa powder, the differences in the cocoa powder and so on. So the best essential vegan dessert is the one that you like the best. For a lot of people, it's a chocolate cake. For other people, it's a vanilla cake. For some people, it's a lightly gelled fruit soup with a beautiful garnish of some appropriate ingredient and a cream. So I hope that answered your question. What's a good substitute for bananas? Well, I'm assuming you either don't like the taste of bananas or I guess you don't like the taste of bananas, but I'm guessing from this question that you're talking about using bananas in a dessert. You can try using some applesauce or another fruit paste, but hold on, because you just reminded me, Velta, that I have something to show you. So I know that banana-based desserts are really popular, and I'm that odd person out that doesn't really love them. My father's second favorite dessert was banana cream pie, but look what I did today. I think you can see this. There are a lot of desserts that say, take a banana, a good ripe banana, but not mushy, and dip it in melted chocolate. I dip this in ganache, and then you've got like a frozen ice cream pop that tastes like banana ice cream. I did it backwards though. I had frozen bananas, lots of frozen bananas in my freezer, and I had some leftover ganache. I'm going to show you the dish. And so I put them on this wooden stick. I dipped the already frozen banana, which is a little wetter than a ripe banana would be, into the ganache. And then I coated it with a combination of cocoa powder and something that I'm used for the very first time today. My friend Chef Char Nolan mentioned it, and it's peanut butter powder. And then I put a couple peanuts on here just to remind me what it was. And here are the other bananas. So I think, Velta, if you're talking about replacing them in a dessert, well, you're not going to make banana bread, but if you're using them as a fat replacer or a moisture replacer, try applesauce. That would be the best thing to do. Monica wants a no-bake brownie recipe. Well, I think brownies are baked. I think, that's why I take issue with people calling a mixture of dates and cocoa powder and chocolate and so on. They call them truffles. But what you can do is I would use dates and cocoa powder and some nut butter and press it into a form of a brownie, maybe even some well-cooked black beans. You want to really flavor it up well, but you're going to press it into a square, I would think, and evenly, and get it into your freezer until it's frozen, and then slice it. Marina wants to know, can the chocolate cake to live for be used to make a Swiss roll? So for anyone who doesn't know, the chocolate cake to live for was my breakthrough vegan cake close to, well, it was over 25 years ago. It was when I transitioned from being a traditional pastry chef and I became vegan. And I really wanted an absolutely perfect cake. And I wasn't sure how to begin because there were no books. And the few recipes I saw didn't make any sense at all. And the desserts I saw were terrible. So after about 6 months, my taste testers, I had this chocolate cake, and they were jumping around the room saying, this is a chocolate cake to live for. So that's how the cake got its name. It has gone on to be, I have the standard version, a no fat added version that I used for Rip Esselstyn's wedding, and I've got a gluten-free version. I haven't used it to make a Swiss roll. It's very moist cake. I don't think it rolls, Marina, but that said, it might if the recipe, the single layer recipe makes an 8 or a 9-inch layer, or a half sheet pan. No, quarter sheet pan. A double recipe would make a half. Try it in a quarter sheet pan and then roll it the way you would do a Swiss roll. Laura wants to know, what's the difference between coconut milk and coconut cream in terms of their use when making desserts? Canned coconut milk has almost as much fat. Let's see, this is in the course and it's not in my head, but I think it's about 30% fat. So it's pretty close to heavy cream. And you would use this when you need something that is a high fat liquid. Coconut milk, I think you're talking about coconut milk like almond milk or rice milk or oat milk, is just coconut. It's the same thing with more water in it. So that's what it is. So you use coconut milk in coconut milk, not in the can, or non-full fat coconut milk in the way that you would use any plant milk, oat milk, almond milk, rice milk, any of those milks. You use coconut milk. You use coconut cream when you need a heavier milk, a heavier cream. And I hope that helps you, Laura. Linda loves Jello. My mother made Jello all the time. My mother didn't cook, but we used to have these like green Jello and red Jello things on the table. How do you make Jello without sugar or Splenda? Well, we spend a lot of time in this course on making agar gels, which is a replacement for Jello. And it's really easy to do once you learn to use agar. So Linda, if you were here when the photo of the lemon tart was shown, if that lemon mixture wasn't in the pie crust, it would be lemon Jello. So that's what you do. You can probably find a gel, and they're called agar gels or cantons. You can look on my website for the recipe, or if you're in the course, you'll learn how to do it. It's really easy. And sometimes they aren't sweetened at all because the fruit juice or the fruit puree is sweet enough. I don't use Splenda. Okay, Vicky says, hi, chef. I'm glad you're looking forward to the event. You're a longtime vegan and chocolate lover, but you haven't been able to make a decent vegan dessert yet. That's sad. That's sad. How do you get the rich flavor and texture without dairy? Well, it's easy when you know how, and that's the point of this course. You learn to use the ingredients. We use real chocolate in different proportions depending on the dessert. There is a lesson in the different kinds of cocoa powder. Non-alkalized, which you see as natural cocoa powder, or alkalized, which you see labeled as Dutch processed. Most often, sometimes European style. They aren't interchangeable in cakes. So that's something that's going to give you a bad result. If you mix that up, you need different leavenings, and it's about the fat that's used, the sweetener that's used, and of course the technique. So it's absolutely doable. I'm really sad to hear that you're a longtime vegan and chocolate lover and haven't had a decent vegan dessert yet, because they are out there. There are, I mean, you know, people will say to me, well, vegan desserts don't taste good. Back in the day, back in the beginning, we didn't have the proper ingredients. We didn't know what we were doing. They didn't taste good. Today, they're indistinguishable from a good traditional dessert. Who hasn't had a traditional dessert that doesn't taste good? We all have had that. So it's a matter of making them properly and using the right ingredients to make them. So I hope you get your good dessert soon, Vicki. Myra says she's camping. Oh, hi. Will you find being creative on the campsite a challenge? So tips are welcome. Well, I'm actually not a camper. So I would say granola, bring some of the graham crackers that are in the course and make s'mores, and, fruit desserts. I know my kids go camping and they bring dried fruit. Dried fruit can be eaten out of hand, but also purees really well and doesn't need any sweetener at all because they're so concentrated. So that's what I would do. Nuts and seeds, make a nice granola. Not a granola, like, what do they call it? Gorp. And add some chocolate chips, and that would be what I would do. And I hope you're camping in some place that's really nice. Hi, Elena. Elena's having a problem with the sponge cake with meringue. I put the same ingredients. I pre-evaporate the water from the chickpea liquid, then whip it, add the flour mixture gently, fold it, bake it at 350, but the result is different always. Well, Marina, that's a really big question and problem that I really can't give you specific answer, because if you're doing everything the same and you know your oven is at temperature, it should be the same every single time. Once you have a recipe correct, then you want to make sure that you don't change it. And that means don't change the flour, don't change the kind of cocoa powder, don't change the sweetener. By nature, I'm a tinkerer, so I have really trained myself that if I'm going to tinker, I'm going to do a small amount and it's just for me, and I'm going to expect a different result. But you write down every single thing. Flours are different. Even, the difference between using a whole wheat pastry flour. We don't use whole wheat flour to make a cake. So I don't know what to say, Elena, and that doesn't sound like it's a recipe in the course. If you want to write to me at fran@ruby.com, I can see if I can help you. Audie wants to know, is there a formula for adjusting the temperature when using a convection oven? Yes, there is. Now, of course, it depends on your oven. I have 2 oven thermometers in my oven, always. And it doesn't matter if your oven is brand new and the most expensive model. Ovens go up and down and they need to be calibrated. So you check the thermometers. I have one on a higher rack and one on a middle rack, and then you adjust the dial as needed. Home convection ovens, typically you knock the temperature back 25 degrees. I have a convection function on my oven, and the oven does that automatically. I've gotten to know my oven. We all need to get to know our ovens, and I find that 25 degrees on convection is too much of a reduction, so I don't do that. But that's what I would say, Audie. Elizabeth has an interesting question. Any tips on making ice cream with oats? The Oatly ice cream is delish. Yes, the Oatly ice cream is delish. And if you look at the ingredients, you're going to see, because oats don't have as much fat as natural, they don't have as much fat as cashew and coconut. Cashew ice, a lot of vegan ice creams are made 100% using cashews or coconut cream or a combination. So I was actually looking at the Oatly package, and they actually have a statement on there saying they have added a lot of fat. Let me take that back. They didn't say a lot, but they said we've added fat because oats don't have enough fat to make a creamy ice cream. So you're going to have to play with that. I don't think homemade oat milk ice cream is going to be as creamy without some nuts or coconut milk. Monica says, I sliced into a watermelon that isn't sweet. I don't want to waste it. No, we don't like waste. We don't like waste. Monica, and everybody here, I love watermelon. I absolutely love watermelon. And I think my friend Kathy Gold said the same thing. We haven't had a good watermelon in a long time. I find that adding lime juice really helps the flavor. But what you can do is, I have a watermelon granita in my book, Vegan Chocolate, and you just freeze the watermelon and add a little bit of sweetener. I don't remember which sweetener I used. And then a granita is made, you puree it, and then a granita is made by freezing a mixture, oftentimes coffee granita, strawberry granita, and then with a fork, you go like this and get the ice crystals. So I think that's what you can do, and then maybe add some chocolate chips to it. Elizabeth wants to know, why do I add xanthan and sugar to my Aquafaba mix? I don't always add xanthan. That is very rare. That's if I want it to be more like marshmallow. But to make an Aquafaba meringue, you have to use sugar. That stabilizes it. So you absolutely have to. I did make some meringue, Aquafaba meringue, using granulated allulose, which is one of the alternative, I call them non-nutritive sweeteners. And of all that type of sweetener, it was the least bad tasting to me, and it worked. I powdered it. It was pretty fine. It's pretty fine. But I powdered it even more, and it was okay. I also used it to make some chocolate pudding. I didn't love it, but that's my palate. It might not be yours, but you absolutely have to use sugar to make Aquafaba meringue. Now, I'm going to try to say your name, and I will apologize in advance if I'm saying this wrong. Amakya says, can you explain how to get a similar result in baking when using a sugar-free substitute with dates or stevia without overly changing the texture of the food? You're not going to get a similar result in a cake that is made with the typical ingredients that are in a cake: flour, sugar, all of these, and a fat. All of these ingredients have a function, and they combine together, assuming that the technique is correct, to give you a tender crumb. So when you substitute dates, and I think you're talking about date paste, which is wetter, and stevia, which has an aftertaste and is much sweeter than sugar, so you use less, you are going to change the texture of the food. Now, that said, you can make some cookies with a date puree or an applesauce puree, and a dense cookie will work fine, or some puddings will work fine. But when you say similar result, honestly, you're not going to get a similar result. I'm sorry. And if anybody disagrees, if anybody has another answer, please let me know. Laura says, when I try to freeze bananas by simply putting them in a plastic container to later use them in a dessert, they're mushy when I got them out of the freezer. No, I wouldn't say that's necessarily normal. When my bananas that have been in the freezer for a long time sometimes get some ice on them, and so they don't look as nice as the ones I pulled out. I like to, when I have the time, I will slice them into rounds, lay them flat, and then put them in a container that's very airtight, and that keeps them the best. The ones that I used here, which are rapidly defrosting, I actually froze in the skin, and then I run the skin under hot water and peel it off, and sometimes that's good. But I think cutting the bananas into pieces and getting them really airtight will help. I use frozen bananas. I let them defrost, and I use them to make banana-based desserts like banana bread or banana cake, and I use the liquid as well. I find that works. So I often use carob as a substitute for chocolate to avoid the caffeine. I've yet to make a really good vegan chocolate cake using carob. Well, because I would have to agree. And I would say that for me, the impetus to make that chocolate cake to live for that I referenced earlier was way back in the day when I couldn't find any good vegan desserts. Somebody handed me a brown cake and said, this is a chocolate cake. And it didn't taste like a chocolate cake. It was brown and it was made with carob. Carob and chocolate are two different things. So if you can't use, if you're avoiding caffeine, make a carob cake. There are ways to enhance the flavor of carob. I think when you roast carob first, on a parchment lined baking sheet at a low temperature, and then the edges of the carob kind of get hard, and then sift it, that really enhances the flavor of carob, but it's still not going to taste like chocolate. So I would say the best thing for you to do is learn how to make a really delicious carob cake, and it is possible. Marina wants to know, is there a substitute for kirsch in a Black Forest cake? You can leave the kirsch out. You don't need to use kirsch. If you're alcohol, if you're not using alcohol, you can use some acid or another interesting flavor, but you absolutely do not have to have the kirsch. It will still be a Black Forest cake. So don't worry about that. I just want to kind of look around and see if I've shown you everything I was going to show you. Another, no bake dessert, of course, is to have truffles in your freezer. These are orange chocolate truffles made with tahini that are absolutely delicious, a little chewier. And these are chocolate truffles where I kind of made the bottoms flat. I keep them in the freezer and I pull them out. You can just dip a nut or stuff a medjool date with some ganache. I think ganache, which again is plant milk and chocolate in varying percentages, is a healthier way to eat chocolate than just solid chocolate because you've got the plant milk there. Or the crostini. This is the chocolate pudding that I defrosted, and it's really delicious. And chocolate pudding is one thing that I don't really like to eat with fruit, but since this isn't warm, it's likely that I'll put some fruit on here, or I don't want to spill anything. Just a little bit of the lemon cream. And this is one rare occasion where I do not have any of the vanilla pastry cream in my freezer. I almost always do. So I wanted to see, is that everything? So what did we make? We made fruit cup with some of the healthy oats and sesame seeds and date paste and a little bit of aquafaba. We've got the simple fruit cup with some tomato and fresh herbs and truffles and the crostini. And don't forget to save your crumbs. Now, some of you might think this is really small. Well, it is small, but I like small size desserts. So I might put some fruit in here. I might put some cream in here. And that's a dessert too. And it's no bake because actually this is crumb from a cake that I baked a while ago. So, and then don't forget your tofu creams because they are really wonderful this time of the year, and your agar-based desserts. So I want to thank you all for coming. It looks like we got through all of the questions. Everybody stay cool. If you're in this side of the world, I know we have students from all over the world, which is really interesting. So for some of you, it is winter, but stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in August. Thank you, everyone. Bye.